We here at the Sports History Network proudly partner with 26 podcasts, all revolving around the history of sports. But did you know that many of our hosts were sports history authors way before they started their shows? It's true. We've got Joe Ziemba, host of When Football Was Football, Joe Zagurski, host of Pro Football in the 1970s, Mark Morthier, host of Yesterday's Sports, Tommy Phillips, host of Lombardi Memories, and Scott Adamson, co-host of From the 55-Yard Line. All these authors have many books for you to choose from. To check them out, go to our website at sportshistorynetwork.com/sportshistorybooks. Pick up your copy today. Soundtrack provided by Kevin MacLeod of filmmusic.io.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello and welcome to the Sports History Network Showcase, our in-house show featuring SHN podcasters talking sports, talking history, and talking sports history. My name is Oz Davis, host of the Sports History Network's Truly the Goats podcast. For this episode of the Showcase, we feature the newest Sports History Network podcast to date, Jamie Furness of the What Was the Score podcast. Jamie, how's it going?
Very good, thank you, Oz. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing. One day is very much like another these days, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
The expression same old has never been so true, I think. Hey, let's just get right into it. According to your bio at the Sports History Network, you're a real quadruple threat. Basketball coach, basketball player, podcaster, and history teacher. Am I correct?
Yeah, and student, if you want to add another one onto that.
As are we all. Have you always been interested in sports history in particular?
Well, I'll tell you what, the sports history one, that's been a recent thing. So all my life I've been interested about history, so much so that I study at a university. And then when my dissertation came around, I was trying to sift through topics that I'm passionate about, and I kept coming back to basketball as what I'm passionate about. And I thought, well, I'd like to write about it, but I don't really know how. I've always been interested in stats and, numbers and stuff like that with regards to sport, going back to the 60s, 70s, who was the best then statistically, so on and so forth. And I went to my lecturer and I said, is this something I can do? And he kind of opened the doors onto sports history for me. So my passion for sports history, that's quite fledgling. That's quite recent. But yeah, it's always been history though.
Who are you coaching these days?
At the moment, I'm coaching kids. I'm coaching at a school up in Cambridge. And that's fun. It's fun because it gives me a chance to break down what I'm passionate about and help me understand it by breaking it down to what it really is. Because the kids won't understand if I start, saying, right, we're going to go for a pin down into a dribble handoff or whatever. So yeah, it really requires me to understand it within myself to help teach them.
Right. Okay, how did you get into the podcasting game then?
So I got invited onto a podcast. So I started off on TikTok and I started making videos about British basketball and it's quite a niche. So it grew. I don't think I could really get any bigger at the moment because, how many people are interested in British basketball. But I grew to about 6,000 followers and then a British basketball kind of multimedia organisation said, do you want to come and talk about it? And I did, and I loved it. Talking about what I'm passionate about, how could I not? Then I got in contact with a couple of the other people that move in that kind of circle. I said, "Do you want to work together?" And they said, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And then after a couple of those, I thought, well, I have a lot more to say. Every time I left the podcast, I'm sitting there thinking, oh, I wish I said that, so on and so forth. And I thought, well, I happen to think I know a lot. I happen to like talking. Why don't I just give it a go and see how it goes? And so far, I'm enjoying it. And that's why I do it.
Oh, I definitely want to talk to you about British basketball
sure.
in a moment. I have a small history with that myself.
Why do we love sports? Who was the first GOAT? What on earth is korfball? Sports history is my passion, and I'm here on this podcast, What Was the Score? The Sports History podcast, to share that with you. I'm going to be talking to sports people, academics, peers, even my friends, to create an environment in which we can relax, learn, and have fun together. Join me as we tackle big sports topics, little historical minutiae, and everything sewing it together. Look forward to weekly topical content as we remember, what was the score? What was the score? The Sports History Podcast with me, Jamie Furness.
Tell us about What Was the Score? What's it about? What's the concept? What do you do?
Yeah, so a lot of, as I say, sports history for me, before I really started delving deeper into it, was, the batting average of X player was .289. That was sports history to me, which I believe was Mickey Mantle's batting average off the top of my head. And that's what it was. And I thought, this is fine, but there's only so much I can remember. And then I started reading about it. And I started taking what I loved from actual, like the bigger picture of history, like the theory, the concepts. And I started overlapping the two. How does the city play into sports history? How does class play into sports history? And I thought, that's what I really want to try and get across. I want to get across that, yes, sport is this fun. This is this fun thing that we all enjoy. And there's lots of numbers, facts, figures, so on and so forth. But there's also this side that concerns the development of sport. And that's what I'm trying to attack with this podcast. I'm trying to get to the bottom of some of these sports, what it means to the people, not so much always the numbers behind it, perhaps some of the theory behind it too. And yes, I'm trying to take a slightly different approach to it. And that's what the podcast is. It's just me picking a topic and, trying to use a little bit of theory to try and explain it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I like that style myself. Truly the GOATs. Personally speaking, great. Let's talk about British basketball for a moment. Sure. I was covering the whole Team Britain situation for a site called ballineurope.com back in 2012, especially during the London Olympics. Yep. And there was all this discussion about the national program because, for example, as home team for the Olympics, you're supposed to get the bye, right?
Yep.
You get the bye into the basketball tournament, among other sports. But there was a big controversy about that because, their program wasn't a true European program and whatnot. What's the situation with the leagues and the national team in Britain these days?
So I'll tackle the leagues first, and I'm going to presume that a lot of your viewers are American. So, of course, in America, you have the draft system and you have the collegiate system. Now, and the NBA is franchised also. Now, in England, we kind of have a mixture between the two, between promotion, relegation, and franchising. So our very top league is the British Basketball League, which is franchised. Okay. But even within that, a lot of the franchises are partnered with universities in England. So you don't have a draft, so to speak. However, you do have teams saying to young players, 18, 19, come and study at our university, and in the meanwhile play for our basketball team. Which it's similar to the academy system in football. Soccer, like association football. So we have that, and that's a fine system. And then below that, we have the National League, divisions 1 through 4, but I think they just abolished 4. Anyway, and that's promotion relegation. Now, also, a lot of those do kind of have ties with the British Basketball League teams and universities. So, for instance, Loughborough in Leicester, perfect example. There's Leicester Riders in the BBL franchised. Then you have Loughborough Student Riders. So Loughborough is one of the biggest sport universities in England, and they kind of feed Leicester a little bit with players, and it's a back and forth relationship. So we kind of have this mix between the American basketball and draft system and like the distinctly British just sign your own players system.
Yeah, the club system.
Yeah. And then with regards to the national team, it's getting better. It really is. We were ranked 41st in the world recently, and we've just qualified for Eurobasket, which is one of the biggest.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it is. So much so that we beat Germany and France in our last 2 games.
Wow. Nice.
Beating France by 21, which is our biggest margin of victory ever. It's in a really good place. It is in a really good place. We have some fantastic players. I think where we've always fallen short is we always have one exceptional player, and that's it. Bringing back notions of Luol Deng.
Yeah, right.
But now we have lots of high quality players. Ovi Soko, perhaps the most famous of whom. So yeah, we're in a good position. Of course, the women's team's also very, very good. We narrowly missed out on Eurobasket, but we've got Temi Fagbenle, who plays in the WNBA. So yeah, but both sides of it are in a good position right now.
Nice. Great. Well, how is it financially?
Financially,
the league can continue.
Yeah, well, financially, it's in a tricky position, as is pretty much every sport in England,
right?
With the exception of the Premier League, because the money involved. However, they have just signed a deal with Sky, the broadcasting network, to put games on TV, and they get a Friday night slot, 7:00, 7:30 tip off, and my family and I watch that. So that's great. You're putting money into it like that. There's always negotiations between the government and the governing bodies to try and get a little bit more money out of them. But as part of this coronavirus relief, Sport in England has given some money to Basketball England to distribute amongst its clubs, which is good. A couple of years ago, we were looking in a bit of a dire state, but of course, London has just been bought out by an American conglomerate, I believe. So yeah, it's actually looking quite good.
Wow.
Yeah, shockingly, I'm optimistic about the state of British basketball, which isn't something I ever thought I'd say.
Right. Well, I was precarious there for a while.
Yeah.
Let's see. Well, what about? Are you into cricket? Can you tell me anything about this year's county championship?
So I live in Chelmsford, Essex, which is.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
okay. That's my team.
Yeah, there you go, Len. And I walk past the ground most days. My granddad is a big fan of cricket, and of course, going to watch 2020 is fascinating. Cricket isn't particularly my specialty. However, I am a big fan of it. I do like watching it a lot. But of course, it's hard to watch it in England, considering every other game is rained off. You have to take a rain check. But, yeah.
True. Yeah. Because I did a summer semester out there in Essex, University of Essex.
Up in Colchester.
In Colchester. I went. We watched a bunch of us, like 7 or 8 of us, went out to watch a match, and basically everybody except for me and the other sports fanatic fell asleep.
Yeah.
That's Americans. That's Americans at the cricket match for you. Before the podcast, we were talking about some of, let's say, our mutual admiration for unusual sports.
Sure, yeah.
Because you had brought up korfball. Here's a challenge for you. Can you describe korfball to someone who doesn't know it?
Yeah, of course, I could give it a go at the very least. So if you picture, I'm going to throw 3 sports at you and just keep them in mind for the moment. We're thinking about netball, we're thinking about field hockey, and we're thinking about basketball. Okay, so let's take the kind of surface you have on a field hockey court. So it's kind of that grassy, sandy kind of thing. Now we're thinking about a netball goal, but it's 11.5 feet tall. Okay, and then we're kind of thinking about, okay, sure, basketball and netball kind of interchangeable here, but we're thinking about the way that you kind of play those games. Right, so the idea of korfball is similar to basketball and netball. Get the ball in the hoop. And you typically dress it quite like field hockey players, actually. It's a mixed team, which is quite vital to the game. It's a mixed team. There is a painted area around the basket, which only certain players are allowed in. You have to match up based on gender for defensive assignments. And yeah, that's basically the game. There's, of course, lots of fine rules, which, would be wasting time going into the fine rules, of course. That is basically it. And what is so, perhaps why you haven't heard about it, because it sounds fine, it sounds accessible. It's very, very specific. Because, of course, netball and basketball goals are the same height. Korfball, 1, you need a special height goal. 2, the court is very specific. There's as I say, a painted area around the basket. But also it's restricted to Belgium and the Netherlands and the Low Countries. And they've kind of taken it as their national sport, and they're quite happy for it not to spread outside. That's why you don't really hear about them nations within basketball, because they're happy playing korfball.
Nice. Well done. Okay, we'll get you out of here, Jamie. But I like to do this whenever possible with a generalist podcaster such as yourself, going back to the Ball in Europe days. Okay, please tell me your 3 favorite teams. Any level, any sport.
In any sport. So,
Yep.
First and foremost, it is the London Lions. They are the basketball team I follow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, that would be number 1. Number 2 would be the Indiana Pacers, because without them, I wouldn't have got into basketball. And then third, I could name another basketball team, but I'll move away. I'll give you a different flavour. I'll go for West Ham United. My father's team, my team. Yeah.
All right. Hey, great. Jamie Furness of the What Was the Score podcast here at the Sports History Network. Thanks very much for joining us on the Showcase.
Thank you for having me.
This has been the SHN Showcase podcast. We'd like to thank our guest, Jamie Furness of the What Was the Score podcast, which can be found at sportshistorynetwork.com or wherever you get your podcast. The theme song for the SHN Showcase is Quartz by Anitech, and it is available through fair use agreement via freemusicarchive.org. SHN Showcase will be back soon with another Sports History Network podcast. Until then, this is Oz Davis saying stay safe and stay historical.
At the Sports History Network, we're all about sports yesteryear, and so we're so pleased to introduce you to Row One, an online memorabilia gallery and shop that brings your sports history to life anywhere. The Row One gallery includes over 5,200 gorgeously reproduced prints of team posters, game program covers, game tickets, advertisements, and more in baseball, pro and college football, pro and college basketball, and more. And any gallery item may be printed in a variety of sizes on wood, metal, canvas, acrylic, or poster paper. And in Row One shop, check out the thousands more of unique items with the retro and historical designs dating back to 1876, including t-shirts, long sleeve shirts, phone cases, mugs, blankets, pillows, towels, and even shower curtains. Go to sportshistorynetwork.com, ROW1, for access to the full Row One catalog and for gallery prints and gift items, plus get a 15% discount off all prints on the Row One Pictorum Gallery with coupon code SHN15. Follow the link on the show notes.